Hello. So our inquiry project is on closing the achievement gap in reading. I'm Caitlin Cole, and my partners are Chelsea Ballard and Alice Lee. Here's just a quote we thought kind of embodied our project. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. We're going to start with an introduction, talk about the impact of school closings, engagement and motivation, interventions, and then a conclusion. To get started, we're going to talk about what an achievement gap is. According to the NCES, the National Center for Education and Statistics, achievement gaps occur when one group of students, grouped by race, ethnicity, gender, or other groupings, outperform another group, and the difference in the average scores for the two groups is statistically significant. So this quote just talks about how reading is essential for success in today's world. Reading and literacy skills are necessary for almost every career path that a child should choose. It's something that students need to build foundations on before they can access other knowledge. So we're going to start by talking about the impacts of school closings. My inquiry question was, what is creating achievement gaps in our classrooms? What are the impacts of school closings on today's classrooms? Just to get started, here is a chart, a scatter plot of DRA data from my classroom. Alice and Chelsea have both seen similar data in their own classrooms. This is where we're at. The blue scatter plots are representing September 2019. So the blue dots are from last year. The kids who these represent are kids who have not dealt with a pandemic, who have gotten kindergarten and first grade education the way that it was planned, and for the most part have had an average education. You can see that there are a few outliers who are low, far below benchmark, which is represented by the yellow line. But most of them are either approaching benchmark or above benchmark. About 50% of these students were below, but were mostly approaching. In 2020, in September, these students had experienced the pandemic and the school closings for 5 months. And you can see that many of the red dots representing them are below the yellow benchmark line. About 85% of my students were below benchmark in September. And so it also shows that they aren't really approaching benchmark, many of them. There's a lot of them that are far below. A lot of students were at end of kindergarten, first grade level at this point. So in order to better understand why we're seeing this kind of data in our classrooms, I set out to do some research. Unfortunately, this is kind of uncharted territory. There aren't a whole lot about pandemics and school closings out there, at least in our settings. And so I looked into a study that shows information about job loss. So fathers who have lost their jobs and the impact it had on their child's academics. So they found that when the fathers lost their jobs, this is during the Great Recession in Spain, there was a 13% decrease in the average grade of these students. So it had a pretty significant impact on their academics. They also found, as a side note in this project, that the father's level of education had a pretty big impact. So those who had fathers who were well educated were less likely to have a decrease in their grades. So the reason I looked into this is because many of the parents in our classrooms are dealing with job loss or being laid off, or just emotional stress of being in a pandemic, food insecurity, anxiety. These are all things that are associated with crises like a Great Recession. So I think it directly relates to what's happening with our kids, and that the stress from their parents may also be impacting their ability to learn. Another study I looked into was on summer slide. So our students have been out of the classroom for 5 months, nearly 5 months. And a typical summer break is only 3 months. So this project that I looked study I looked into was on a 3 month summer break, and it showed that summer slide accounts for 80% of the difference in academic achievement between those of low and high economic status. So it's a really significant impact. So those students who don't have access to books, who don't have access to learning materials, whose parents aren't well educated, who live in communities that don't really support education as much, are going to be greatly impacted by being out of school. And we're going to see that in our kids who have been out of school for 5 months. So school closures, even if we did things over the computer, it's not the level of education that we're used to in our classrooms. This is just a chart that kind of shows all of the things that can impact students and create achievement gaps. So achievement gaps can be created by all kinds of things. There's a whole slew of things that can create gaps in students. Resources, healthcare, family stability, nutrition, there's all kinds of things. We're going to focus on 2 areas on how to close the achievement gap. One is Chelsea's going to talk about motivation and engagement and how we can close the gap. And Alice is going to talk about interventions that she can put in place for her students.
My name is Chelsea. I'm going to be talking about engagement and motivation. My question was, what supports can teachers provide for reading engagement and motivation that develops a sense of self-discovery and strengthens their individual self-efficacy? For the research portion, I had some articles that I found that were helpful to kind of confirm that some of the things I was doing in my classroom was working for students. I have them use an online tool called Reading Eggs Daily. They do reading activities in an arcade game-like scenario and with fun music, colors, and it makes it really fun for them. They earn points. And then they also do something called Fast Phonics, which is embedded in the Reading Eggs that I also have them do as some phonics time, and they work on their phonics scores. That helps with their motivation and engagement because they earn prizes. What I noticed at the beginning of the year using this tool, my students took a placement test, and most of them started at the kindergarten level for reading and phonics because of this time off from school. And now, as I've been increasing this on their days at school and their days at home, they are approaching first grade level and getting closer and closer to second. I make sure we do this throughout the day, and I try to implement at home, but that is a struggle that is hard for some families to do. Something else I work on to support that like helps promote their growth is I give them independent free choice reading. So I allow them to pick up books that they want to read and not necessarily can read, but because their motivation is to read it, they will spend as much time as possible trying to get some of that reading done. From my literature that I gathered, something I really liked was the SMILE acronym. It's for sharing, me, importance, liking, and engagement. And what I really took from that was the importance of having students share what they read, because being able to retell the story is allowing them to see that someone's interested in what they're reading. So now they're motivated to continue reading and staying engaged in that reading to know what to talk about. Another thing I allow them to do with their choice books is I allow them to sit wherever they like. And again, giving them that ability to read. And then I'm always praising them for their job well done. For Reading Eggs and Fast Phonics, this is just the rubric for growth. A lot of my kids started at the 1 to 50 range for reading and now are in the first grade level. And I have one who's very, very close. For Fast Phonics, a lot of them are in the 1 to 5 peak range. I have one in the peak 6 to 12 for phase 3, and they're continuing to grow from there. if you look at my first student, he's actually my full remote student, and I hear from his mom that he's really, really, really loving this. So it's showing that it's interesting to him and he's really growing. And I'm hoping that he comes back to school after the holidays and there is some work there that I will be able to do to help increase his motivation when he's at school. But you can see a lot of the growth from students starting off at that kindergarten level, and now most of them are in that first grade level. This also is showing how much time each student spends. Now that one student has spent 24 hours and 21 minutes reading, and now that's a lot of time, but his Lexile growth is really crazy, and I am just going to use this as a tool going forward to see more growth with all my students. This is again looking at the bottom graph. You can see in October that students spent a lot of time reading. And during that time, we didn't have a lot of vacations. So I would think if we didn't have Thanksgiving break or Christmas, November and December would just be that high. But I can use this as a tool to help my growth. But it just shows on the graph above as well that kids are getting closer and closer to that first grade level. Lastly, this is something I do for my kids, independent reading. They have a notebook where we try to do free choice independent reading 5 minutes a day. We don't always get this chart completed, but they love to be able to color in that they read 5 minutes. And sometimes I do extend the timer, but the being able to color it in and fill it in really just shows how much time we're really spending reading.
My part of the project was on interventions. The inquiry question I posed was, what evidence-based intervention strategies have the biggest impact in regard to closing the achievement gap in reading?
The work of Jan Chappis, along with Dr. Anita Stewart McCafferty and Dr. Jeff Beaudry, really speaks to all of us educators. How can we get our students front and center in the learning, involved in assessing the quality of their work and the learning process? This involves providing that clear vision of the learning targets, along with descriptive feedback, focused instruction, practice, and having the students work on goal setting and reflection. For this project, I have been working on strategies that have the biggest impact in regards to closing the achievement gap in reading. I've been looking at effect ratings and providing instruction in reading with clear learning targets. I've been doing word work with my readers that are below grade level, and fluency, comprehension work, and vocabulary development with all students. I've been involving students in goal setting and reflecting on their progress. This is an intervention I'm doing with my readers that are below grade level. It's 2-minute word work. It's a drill that improves decoding words and fluency. It's 2 minutes of daily targeted practice. And the way I'm tracking their progress is with their DRA reading level. The 4 students that I am tracking, Gunnar started the year at a kindergarten level 3, Alana at an early first grade level 4, Haley at a level 10, and Molly at level 14. The way this intervention works there are 10 pages of words. Each page works on a couple of different skills, and there are 80 words on each page. The student has 2 minutes to read the page, and when they do complete that, they move to the next. This provides a lot of needed repetition for students with letter sounds and reading words. Gunnar continues to be on the first page. He started by reading 16 words in 2 minutes. He's up to 65. I've been able to pinpoint that he is having a very difficult time between B's, D's, G's, P's, and Q's when he reads. But he is gaining confidence, and those first 40 words are going smoothly and quickly with the repetition. He set himself a goal for 4 new words per day, and usually he's achieving it. Alana is in a very similar situation to Gunnar. The only difference is she asks to bring the words home each night because she's very excited about progressing. Haley is on the 4th word list. She's reading 302 words correctly. Her goal is 6 to 10 new words per day. Molly started by reading 37 words in 2 minutes on the first list. She's now on the 5th list, and she has read 391 words correctly. She set a goal for herself of 10 new words per day. The 2-minute word work is helping increase DRA levels in striving readers. I think it's one component. Gunnar has gone from an end of kindergarten reading level to 1st grade level. Alana from beginning 1st grade to mid 1st grade. Haley from beginning 1st to beginning 2nd. And Molly from end of 1st to mid 2nd. Using teaching strategies with high effect ratings is definitely benefiting my students, providing clear learning goals for my students, having them track progress and self-assess, providing descriptive feedback, and looking at the evidence to determine next steps. Also having conversations and building their vocabulary are all boosting their reading scores. And when those scores increase, the students are encouraged, it's building their self-esteem and making them dare to take risks. In summary, and connecting to the research, teachers really do hold the power to transform the life of readers who struggle. If we use engaging sound literacy programs, all students can and will learn to read. It is helpful to consider effect size when planning lessons and activities. We need to make sure our students understand the learning target and have a part in setting goals and assessing their progress. Students benefit when all teachers K-12 teach, model, pre-teach vocabulary words, and scaffold skills. We can help our readers become more strategic.
And in conclusion, an achievement gap in reading occurs when one group of students outperform another group of students. To close this gap, students need to be engaged and excited about reading. They need direct instruction and interventions to help them in the areas they struggle. It is also important that they continue to read over the summer. Our research and collaboration has opened our eyes to many ways we can support our students and work towards closing the gap.